Alright, let's dive into the dark, twisted world of Catherine Monvoisin, better known as Voisin, the poison priestess of Paris. By the end, you'll be side-eyeing every candlelit fortune teller you pass. Paris, 1670, the kind of place where the air smelled of fresh bread, sewage, and if you hung around the wrong circles, death. It was a city caught between grandeur and crime, gold-encrusted palaces on one side, streets teeming with pickpockets and beggars on the other, and hidden somewhere in the middle, a woman with a vial in one hand and a deck of cards in the other, capable of deciding who lived and who'd be 6 feet under by the end of the week. Catherine Monvoisin didn't start out as a name whispered in fear. She was just another Parisian trying to survive. Married young to Antoine Monvoisin, a jeweller who had all the business sense of a loaf of bread. Spoiler: the business flopped. Debts piled up, and when Parisian debt collectors came knocking, they weren't exactly handing out polite warnings. More like, pay up, or you'll be pulling teeth out of your bread for the next week. With her husband spiralling and her family on the brink, Catherine did what any desperate woman in the 17th century Paris might consider. She reinvented herself. Not as a baker or seamstress, she leaned into something darker. Fortune-telling. You'd think, oh, cute palm readings and maybe some crystal balls, right? But Catherine wasn't reading palms for fun. She was reading futures. And not just who'd get married next spring. She was telling Parisian nobles who needed to disappear from their lives permanently. She had the look for it too. Wild, unkept hair, piercing eyes that made you feel like she knew every bad thought you ever had, and an aura that screamed, I know things you don't. And business? Booming. Nobles, merchants, even the clergy, all lining up to see Voisin. Some wanted love spells, others wanted fortunes. But the darker ones, they came for poisons. Because nothing says power move like slipping your rival a dose of arsenic with their morning wine. But it wasn't just the poisons that made Catherine infamous. It was the way she sold them. Wrapped in rituals, candles flickering, Latin chants filling the air. The whole shebang. It made the high and mighty feel less like they were plotting murder and more like they were part of some grand mystical event. A little sprinkle of the occult to spice up their crime. Now, this is where it gets properly grim. Because Catherine wasn't working alone. She had a whole underground network. Apothecaries, priests willing to perform black masses, because apparently even priests have bills to pay, and even midwives who knew a thing or two about herbal concoctions that did more than just soothe a cold. It was like the Amazon Prime of the occult. Need a love potion by Thursday, sorted. A slow-acting poison that makes it look like natural causes, delivered with a smile. But here's the part that really gets me. Among her clientele was some of the highest-ranking nobles in France. Even people brushing shoulders with King Louis XIV himself. It's like if your local corner shop owner was secretly supplying the royal family with potions and poisons, and the king, oblivious, or maybe just turning a blind eye, because let's face it, having half your court wiped out by mysterious illnesses probably raised a few eyebrows. One of the darkest tales to come out of Voisin's little enterprise involved black masses. Full-on satanic rituals where clients would lie on altars, prayers twisted into curses, and sometimes, in the grimmest versions, sacrifices were rumoured. Was all of it true? Maybe not. But in a city already thick with paranoia, rumours spread like wildfire. There was even a first-hand account from one of her former clients who'd had second thoughts. Imagine sitting there, candles flickering, Catherine muttering incantations, and suddenly realising, oh no, I might have actually sold my soul for a love spell. This noble apparently shaking so much he nearly knocked over a chalice. Described how Catherine would hold a black mass where the client's deepest desires were spoken out loud. Love, power, revenge, and the priest would promise it all for a price. And the price? Usually a hefty bag of gold, but sometimes if the request was dark enough, something worse. As her name spread through the city's underbelly, so did the fear. People started whispering about friends who'd dropped dead out of nowhere, rivals who'd mysteriously fallen ill, and that worried neighbour who suddenly got rich and married a noble despite looking like a wet mop. All traced back in hushed tones to Voisin. But like all good horror stories, things can only stay hidden for so long, and Catherine? She was getting reckless. Her network was growing, the requests were getting darker, and with each whispered rumour, the net around her began to tighten. By the late 1670s, the streets were filled with whispers. Nobles dying suddenly, marriages torn apart by affairs that had the scent of magic about them, and rumours of secret rituals echoing through the candlelit basements. Voisin's network had grown into something monstrous, stretching its fingers deep into the upper crust of Parisian society. But here's the thing. When your side hustle involves poisoning half of Paris and dabbling in satanic rituals, someone's eventually going to notice. Enter the affair of the poisons. It all kicked off when authorities stumbled across a minor fortune teller who got a bit too chatty after being arrested. One minute she's pleading innocence, and the next she's throwing names around like confetti. Names of nobles, names of priests, and crucially, the name everyone was too afraid to speak aloud, Voisin. This wasn't just a scandal anymore, this was a crisis. People in high places were starting to panic, because Voisin's ledger, she kept a ledger of all her clients, because apparently, even underground poison dealers have admin. Had names that could topple the entire French court, nobles, royal mistresses, even whispers that Madame de Montespan, King Louis XIV's favourite mistress, had been a client. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was running a secret poison business, I'd at least avoid writing it all down like I'm filling out a Tesco loyalty card. The police, led by a man named Gabriel Nicolas de la Reynie, started digging, and what they found, it was like peeling back layers of rot. Secret rooms filled with poison vials, tools for black masses, eyewitnesses describing rituals that made their skin crawl, babies sacrificed, blood-drinking ceremonies, prayers twisted into curses. Now, were all these stories true? Maybe, maybe not. But the panic was real, and in the 17th century Paris, rumours could kill faster than any poison. Voisin, of course, kept up appearances. For a while, she still hosted her fortune-telling sessions, still sold her love potions and poisons, but she must have known the walls were closing in. Maybe she thought her connections, her high-ranking clients, would protect her. Maybe she was just too deep to back out. But then came the day they knocked on the door. Arrested in 1679, Catherine was dragged to prison, and for the first time the poison priestess was the one with no escape plan. No potions, no secret passages, just cold stone walls and the weight of her sins. Though, I doubt she saw it that way. In fact, during the first few rounds of interrogation, she kept her mouth shut tighter than a serial killer's locked cellar. That is, until the torture started. And oh, did the confessions pour out then. She spoke of her network, of apothecaries, priests, nobles. She described the black masses, the poisons, the deals struck in shadowy corners. She even admitted to selling poisons that had killed hundreds. And the worst part, she claimed Madame de Montespan, the king's mistress, had commissioned love spells and, more disturbingly, dark rituals to keep the king's affections. This was nuclear-level scandal. The king's inner circle involved in satanic rituals. It was like something out of a horror novel, if horror novels existed back then. But Louis XIV, despite the mounting evidence, wanted it all buried. He wasn't about to let his glittering court be dragged through the mud. So, names were erased from records, testimonies lost, and the deeper truth swallowed by the shadows. Catherine's fate, however, was sealed. In February 1680, she was sentenced to death. No long drawn-out trial, no chance for redemption, just a one-way ticket to the stake. They dragged her through the streets of Paris, bound and gagged, because rumour had it, they feared she might curse the crowd with her final words. A bit dramatic, maybe, but when you've built your life around whispers of the occult, people aren't taking any chances. The fire was lit, and the poison priestess of Paris became ash and smoke. Even after her death, the fear lingered. Her network had been massive. People wondered how many others had slipped through the cracks. How many nobles still carried secrets from her dark ledger. Some say the affair of the poisons changed Paris forever, pushing the occult deeper underground. Others claim it didn't stop anything, that poisons and dark magic just learned to hide better. What's undeniable though, is that Catherine Monvoisin wasn't just a fortune teller, or a poisoner, or a fraud. She was a reflection of the desperate, brutal world she lived in, where power was everything and people were willing to sell their souls and a few rivals' lives to climb the ladder. And for a while, she sat at the top. And that's the story of Catherine Monvoisin, fortune teller, poisoner, and self-proclaimed high priestess of the dark arts. It's mad to think how one woman who started with nothing could wield that much power, slipping poison into wine glasses while rubbing elbows with Paris's elite. I mean, imagine heading to your local fortune teller to get your palm read and walking out with a love potion, a death curse, and a side of existential dread. But seriously, what do you think? Was Voisin just a symptom of the twisted world she lived in, or was she something darker? Someone who thrived on chaos and misery? Let me know in the comments. Do you think you would have paid the price and risked a visit to her? I just want to say apologies if I butchered any pronunciations, and hey, if you enjoyed this little trip into the darker corners of history, give the video a like, maybe subscribe if you haven't already. There's plenty more where this came from. Stories of shady figures, forgotten legends, and the kind of weird, twisted stuff that makes you question everything. Thanks for sticking around till the end, and remember, next time you're sipping a glass of wine, maybe give it a little sniff first, just in case. Catch you in the next one.